Dad, we need to talk. My son Andrew's voice sounded different on the phone. There was something there that I couldn't immediately identify, nervousness, perhaps guilt. It was 7 a.m. on a Tuesday in October when I received that call. I was in the kitchen of his home in Denver, making his morning coffee, when my world fell apart in a matter of minutes. Andrew, are you okay? Did something happen? Dad, Jessica and I are on our way over. We'll be there in 20 minutes. His tone was urgent, almost desperate. My 32-year-old son, always so composed and responsible, seemed like a completely different person. It's okay, son. But tell me what's going on. It's better if we talk in person. When I hung up, a strange feeling came over me. Over the past 6 months, Andrew had asked me to sign some papers related to the savings account we had held together since he was a teenager, an account into which I had deposited $400,000 over 30 years of working as a civil engineer. My name is James Mitchell, his name is Andrew. I'm 61 years old, and I always believed I had raised my son to be a man of integrity. I worked double shifts for decades, saved every penny I could, sacrificed vacations and luxuries to ensure he had every opportunity he never had. But that morning, as I waited for her arrival, something told me that my blind trust was about to be tested in a way I had never imagined. 20 minutes later, I heard the sound of the car pulling into the driveway. Through the window, I saw Andrew get out of the driver's seat with tense movements, while Jessica remained in the passenger seat, nervously fiddling with her cell phone. When I opened the door, what I saw on my son's face frightened me. He was pale, with deep circles under his eyes, and for the first time in years, he avoided my direct gaze. Dad, he began, but Jessica interrupted him, getting out of the car with a posture I knew well, that arrogance disguised as determination that she always showed when she wanted something. James, we need a place to stay for a while, she said bluntly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. It was at that moment that something clicked in my mind. The signatures on the papers, Jessica's constant requests for small loans, the changes in Andrew's behavior over the past few months. Where have you been living? I asked, feeling my stomach tighten. We had to leave the apartment, Andrew muttered, finally facing his father. Dad, I can explain everything. But while he spoke, my eyes fixed on the suitcases in the back seat of the car, the expensive clothes Jessica was wearing, the gold watch on my son's wrist, a watch I had never seen before. If you're following this story and want to know how a father discovered he was betrayed by his own son, be sure to subscribe to the channel to see how this situation unfolds. Because what I was about to discover about my family would change my life forever. And the reaction I would have when I learned the full truth about his $400,000 would be something none of them were prepared to face. Dad, sit down. You'd better be seated to hear this, Andrew said, avoiding his gaze as Jessica settled onto my couch as if she were her own, owning the place. I sat down in my favorite armchair, the same one I used to read to Andrew when he was a child, and waited. But it was Jessica who spoke first. James, before Andrew begins to explain, I want his jaw to understand that we did the best we could under the circumstances. Not everyone is lucky enough to live in a paid-off house, receiving retirement without worrying about anything. I felt my jaw clench. Lucky? I had worked 70 hours a week for decades, sacrificing every moment of leisure, every opportunity to travel, every unnecessary purchase to build that security. Jessica, what does that have to do with you needing to move out of the apartment? Andrew, just tell his father, she said, nudging him in the arm with a perfectly manicured red fingernail. My son took a deep breath and finally faced me. Dad, I used the money from our joint account. Used it how? All of it. The words hit me like a punch in the stomach. $400,000. My entire life savings in a single account that I had put in his name just to make inheritance issues easier in the future. All of it. My voice came out lower than I intended. Dad, I can explain. Jessica had some credit card debt that needed to be paid off urgently. And then it was her who saw an incredible investment opportunity that... What debt, Andrew? Jessica rolled her eyes. James, everyone has credit card debt. It's no big deal. How much? $120,000, Andrew muttered. $120,000 in credit card debt. I struggled to process that number. In his entire life, he had never owed more than $5,000 at one time. What did he spend $120,000 on, Jessica? Normal things. Clothes, cosmetics, a few trips with my friends before the wedding, furniture for the apartment. James, you don't understand how expensive it is to maintain a decent standard of living these days. I looked at the dress she was wearing, clearly designer, and the jewelry adorning her wrists. Decent standard of living. What about the rest of the money? $280,000 doesn't just disappear paying off credit cards. Well, Jessica smiled for the first time since she arrived. I invested in a fantastic opportunity that my friend Melissa introduced me to. She opened a beauty clinic in Miami and needed investment partners. It's a growing market, James. Women will always want to look beautiful. $280,000? Actually, it was $300,000. But Melissa got me a discount because we're friends. $300,000 given to a friend to open a cosmetic clinic. I felt the world spinning around me. Andrew, were you aware of this? Dad, Jessica showed him the entire business plan. It seemed solid. Melissa has experience in the field and... Have you seen this clinic in operation? Silence. Andrew, have you visited these facilities in Miami? Dad, there was no need. Melissa has been his friend for years. He trusts her completely, Jessica interrupted. And where is the return on this investment? These things take time, James. It's not like it's going to turn a profit right away. Melissa said it needs at least 2 years for the business to establish itself. 2 years. I looked at my son, trying to find the responsible man I had raised, but I saw only a puppet repeating his wife's words. And his apartment? Well, with the debts paid off and the investment made, we're a little tight financially. The landlord wasn't very understanding when we were 2 months behind on rent. 2 months. They had spent $400,000 and couldn't pay 2 months' rent. James, Jessica leaned forward, putting her hand on his arm, I know it seems like a lot of money, but think of it as an investment in the family. When Melissa's clinic takes off, we'll be able to pay you back with interest. James, take her hand off your arm. She recoiled, surprised by my tone. Andrew, answer me this. Before spending $400,000 from our account, did he think to call her? Did he think to ask her what he thought? Dad, Jessica said he'd complicate everything, that he's too conservative with money and... Jessica said. Dad, it's not her fault. It was my decision. But I had seen enough. The way she nudged him when she wanted he to speak. The way she answered for him. The way he looked at her before saying anything, like a dog waiting for approval. How long have you two been married, anyway? 8 months, Andrew replied. 8 months. In 8 months, her had convinced my son to spend his entire life savings. And Jessica, what did you do for a living before you got married? I was a freelance image consultant. How much did you make per month? James, that's very personal. $400,000 from my bank account has been spent. Nothing is too personal now. Andrew cleared his throat. She made about $500 a month, Dad. But it's project-based work, so it varied. $500 a month. And she had managed to rack up $120,000 in credit card debt. Jessica, how did you get approved for so many credit cards earning $500 a month? I used Andrew's salary as a reference. We're married, it's family money. Fraud. Her fraud had allowed her to get the cards, and then she convinced my son to empty my account to pay off the fraudulent debts. Dad, Andrew stood up, I know it looks bad, but Jessica is right. The investment will work out. And in the meantime, we just need a place to stay until we get back on our feet. Get back on our feet with what money, Andrew? With her salary. I'll work longer hours, take on extra projects. Jessica sighed dramatically. James, you're not going to leave your family on the street, are you? We're all that you have. All that I had. This woman had financially destroyed my son in 8 months, and now she was sitting in my living room emotionally blackmailing me. It was at that moment that I made a decision that would change our relationship forever. No. What do you mean no, Dad? You're not staying here. But Dad. Andrew, you're an adult. You made adult decisions. Now you're going to deal with the consequences like an adult. Jessica jumped off the couch, her face red with anger. What kind of father are you? His son is asking for help and you just turn your back on him. The kind of father who won't allow you to continue using me as an ATM. What happened next showed me exactly who my son had married. And why I was right not to let them walk all over me again. Jessica jumped off the couch as if she had been electrocuted. His face, previously perfectly made up, was now contorted into an expression I had never seen before, pure rage without any attempt at disguise. "You selfish jerk, his miserably," she yelled, pointing her finger at me. "You have a 5-bedroom house all to yourself, a fat pension, and you won't help your own son?" "Jessica, lower your voice." "I won't lower anything. Andrew, are you listening to this? His father is kicking us out." Andrew stood up, clearly uncomfortable. "Dad, please reconsider. It's only for a few weeks until we can get organized." "Organized with what money, Andrew? You spent $400,000 in 8 months. It was his money." Jessica yelled. "It wasn't his money. It was my money in a joint account with my son." She laughed, a bitter, cruel sound. "Legally, Andrew had full rights to that account. So yes, it was our money, and we spent it as we saw fit." I felt my jaw clench. Technically, she was right. The joint account gave Andrew full access to the funds. But morally, ethically, she was completely wrong. "Jessica, you convinced my son to spend his life savings on a friend you barely know. Melissa has been my best friend since high school. You're 26. That's 8 years ago. So what? She knows more about business than you do," his bitter old man. Andrew finally reacted. "Jessica, don't talk to my dad like that." "Why not? He's being a jerk. Just look at this place, Andrew." She gestured dramatically around my living room. Old furniture, small television, 90s decor. He lives like a beggar with money in the bank. I live within my means. Her means are pathetic, she shouted. What did he work his whole life for? To die alone in a house full of junk. It was at that moment that something inside me snapped. It wasn't just anger. It was a cold, cutting clarity about who this woman really was. "You know what, Jessica? You're right about one thing. Andrew had legal access to that account. But you forgot one detail." "What detail?" "I have access to the bank statements from the last 5 years." His face paled slightly. "And those statements show a very interesting spending pattern. Especially in the last 8 months. James, what are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating that I'm going to hand these statements over to the Internal Revenue Service." Andrew stood up abruptly. "Dad, why?" "Because his wife spent $300,000 on an investment that probably doesn't exist. And if it doesn't exist, it's tax evasion. If it does exist and wasn't properly declared, it's also tax evasion." Jessica was silent for the first time since she had arrived. "Furthermore," I continued, "I'm going to hire a private investigator to check out that clinic in Miami. If it's legitimate, great. If it's fake, you two are going to have much bigger problems than not having a place to live." "Dad, you can't do this to us," Andrew said, but her voice was shaking. "I can and I will. You stole $400,000 from me, and now you want me to feed and house you too. Do you think I'm an idiot?" Jessica finally found her voice again. "You have no proof of anything." "I have all the bank statements, Jessica. I have the credit cards you took out using Andrew's income as collateral. I have the exact dates of every expense. And I'll have a lot more when my investigator is done." She looked at Andrew desperately. "Do something." But for the first time since they had arrived, my son didn't respond immediately. He was looking at me with an expression he couldn't decipher. "Andrew," Jessica insisted. "His father is threatening us." "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm just letting you know what his next steps will be." "Dad," Andrew said slowly, "Melissa's clinic really exists." "How do you know?" Silence. "Andrew, how do you know?" Jessica showed me pictures. "Pictures of the clinic or pictures of Melissa?" More silence. "Photos that anyone could take from Google Images?" Jessica exploded again. "Enough. Andrew, we're leaving now. His father clearly hates us." "I don't hate you. I hate what you did." "It's the same thing." It's not the same thing, Jessica. You made a conscious decision to spend my money without consulting me. Now you're going to deal with the consequences. Andrew grabbed his car keys. Let's go, Jessica. Where to? She shouted. We have nowhere to go. You should have thought about that before. As he and she headed for the door, Jessica turned to me one last time. When Andrew realizes what kind of father you really are, he'll never want to talk to you again. Maybe. But at least he'll know that I'm not someone who can be easily fooled. They slammed the door behind them, leaving my house silent for the first time in hours. But the silence didn't last long. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Dad, it's Andrew. Do you have to do this yourself? Do what? Hire an investigator. Talk to the IRS. Can't we just work this out as a family? Andrew, working it out as a family, is exactly what cost him $400,000. Dad, please. No, Andrew. You chose to treat this as a business transaction when you spent his money without permission. Now we're going to treat it like a business transaction until the end. I hung up and immediately called his lawyer. It was at that moment that I made the decision that would change everything. It wasn't just about getting his money back. It was about finding out exactly who this woman was who had poisoned his son against him. And what I was about to discover about Jessica would be far worse than he could ever have imagined. The next morning, I was sitting in the office of Marcus Thompson, a private investigator recommended by my lawyer. Marcus was in his 50s, with gray hair and the posture of someone who had seen it all in her career. Mr. Mitchell, based on what you've told me, this case goes beyond simple financial mismanagement, he said, leafing through her notes. Her daughter-in-law exhibits a pattern of behavior that suggests previous experience with this type of manipulation. What do you mean? Women like Jessica rarely start with $400,000 on their first attempt. They practice with smaller amounts, refine their techniques, test different types of victims. I felt a chill in my stomach. Do you think she's done this before? That's what we're going to find out. I need him to give me everything he knows about her. Full name, date of birth, previous addresses, names of family members. I spent the next hour providing every detail I could remember about Jessica Marie Crawford, realizing for the first time how little I knew about the woman who had convinced my son to empty my bank account. One thing bothers me, Marcus said. That clinic in Miami. You said she invested $300,000. I'll start there. 3 days later, he called me with his first findings. James, you need to sit down for this. Melissa's clinic doesn't exist. My stomach clenched. What do you mean it doesn't exist? There is no cosmetic clinic registered in Miami with the name you mentioned. No business licenses, no tax records, nothing. And Melissa? Jessica Marie Crawford never studied with anyone named Melissa in the school records I was able to access. So the $300,000. It's simply gone. But there's more. Jessica has used 3 different names in the last 7 years. Crawford is just the most recent. I felt my vision blur. What other names? Jessica Thompson and Jessica Williams. As Thompson, she became romantically involved with a 62-year-old businessman in Phoenix. She convinced him to loan her $70,000 for an import business. As Williams, she did the same thing with a widower in Portland, $50,000 for a beauty salon franchise. And the money? There was never any return. In both cases, she simply disappeared when they started asking questions. I was listening to the description of a professional criminal. A woman who had turned destroying families into a career. Marcus, there's one more thing. I need to know exactly where that $300,000 went. I'm already tracking it. But James, you need to prepare yourself for what we're going to find. Women like Jessica rarely spend stolen money on legitimate investments. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my son, who had always been too naive for his own good, completely in the hands of an experienced criminal. On Thursday, my phone rang again. Dad, it's me, Andrew. Hi, son. Dad, Jessica and I were talking, and we thought maybe we could make a deal. What kind of deal? Well, we know you're upset about the $400,000, but Jessica had an idea. If you lend us $50,000 to rent an apartment and get settled, we can sign a contract promising to pay you back in 5 years. An additional $50,000. After stealing $400,000, they wanted another $50,000. Andrew, let me get this straight. You spent all his savings, and now you want him to lend you more money. Dad, it's only temporary. Jessica is going to start working as a freelance consultant again, and I'm going to take on more projects. We can pay you back. With what professional experience will Jessica get clients as a consultant? Silence. Andrew, answer me. What kind of consulting did she do that paid $500 a month? Dad, you don't understand. That market is different now. She has new connections, new contacts. New connections. New contacts. The same lies she had used in Phoenix and Portland. Son, the answer is no. Dad, please. We have nowhere else to go. It was at that moment that I made a decision that would change our family dynamic forever. Andrew, I'm going to make you an offer. Come here alone tomorrow. Without Jessica. I have some things to show you. What kind of things? Things about your wife that you need to know before you continue defending her. Dad, I won't listen to you badmouth Jessica. Then continue living in a fantasy. But when the whole truth comes out, and it will, remember that I had this conversation with you. I hung up and immediately called Marcus. How's the money trail? Good question. I found something that will shock you. The $300,000 he didn't disappear. It's in a bank account in the Cayman Islands in the name of a shell company. A shell company? JS Investments Limited registered 8 months ago, right when Jessica married his son. 8 months. She had planned this from the beginning. Marcus, that means she never intended to invest in any clinic. Exactly. And there's more. The shell company made regular transfers to a personal account she maintains at the same bank. $200,000 is still there, James. She has his money. $200,000. My money was in an offshore account while she cried poverty and borrowed another $50,000. How long do you think she planned this? Based on the records I found, she started researching Andrew at least a year before casually meeting him at that networking event. Casually. Everything had been calculated from the first meeting. James, I need to warn you about something else. Jessica had a consultation with a divorce lawyer yesterday. I felt my blood run cold. Is she going to file for divorce? On the contrary. She is inquiring about her rights as a wife, specifically regarding property division and alimony. Apparently, she believes Andrew is entitled to a portion of her future inheritance. My future inheritance. This woman was planning to divorce my son after stealing everything she could, and she still wanted a slice of my estate. It was at that moment that my strategy changed completely. It was no longer about getting the money back. It was about protecting my son from a professional predator who was about to destroy him completely. Marcus, I need everything you can get on Jessica. All the documents, all the evidence, all the records. And I need a second legal opinion on some issues. What kind of issues? About fraud, theft, and how to protect Andrew from the criminal consequences of what her wife has done. Because if you're following this story of manipulation and discovery, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss how this web of lies began to unravel. When I hung up the phone, I realized I was dealing with something much bigger than irresponsible spending. Jessica wasn't a spendthrift wife. She was a professional criminal who had chosen my family as his next target. And she had no idea that I already knew everything. But when he found out, it would be too late for any escape plan. The game had completely changed. And now it was his turn to play. On Friday morning, Marcus called his wife urgently. James, we need to act today. Jessica transferred $100,000 from the Cayman account to a personal account in the United States last night. I felt my adrenaline spike. She's running away with the money. Exactly. And there's more. I found out that she bought a one-way ticket to Las Vegas for this afternoon. Alone. Las Vegas. Without Andrew. The rat was abandoning ship. Marcus, do you have all the documents ready? Everything. Bank statements from the Caymans, records of the shell company, history of the fake names, evidence of previous scams. It's enough for criminal proceedings in multiple jurisdictions. Then it's time to confront his son. An hour later, Andrew arrived at my house alone, as I had requested. He looked exhausted, thinner than the last time I saw him. Her clothes were wrinkled, as if he had slept in her. "Dad, thank you for giving me this chance to talk." "Sit here, son. I have a few things to show you." I placed the documents Marcus had given me on the coffee table. Bank statements, transfer records, photos of IDs with different names. "Andrew, what do you see here?" He picked up the first papers, frowning. "Dad, where did you get these?" "A private investigator." "Son, her bank account in the Cayman Islands has $200,000 of our money." Andrew's face went white. "That can't be right." "It's more than right. She set up a shell company called JS Investments Limited and transferred $300,000 there 8 months ago. Melissa's clinic never existed." Andrew's hands began to shake as he leafed through the documents. "Dad, she told me the money was invested in the clinic." "Andrew, look at these photos." I showed him the ID cards with the names Jessica Thompson and Jessica Williams. Over the past 7 years, her wife has used 3 different identities to commit financial fraud. In Phoenix, she stole $70,000 from a businessman. In Portland, $50,000 from a widower. Andrew, she researched him for a year before meeting him at that networking event. It was all planned. At that moment, my phone rang. It was Marcus. "James, Jessica just arrived at the airport. But there's something new. Andrew is with her." My blood ran cold. "Marcus, Andrew is here with me." "Then who is with her at the airport?" I looked at my son, who was still processing the documents. "Marcus, can you send me a photo?" 2 minutes later, I received a photo on my cell phone. Jessica was at the airport, hugging a well-dressed gray-haired man in his 40s. I showed the photo to Andrew. "Son, do you know this man?" Andrew looked at the photo and turned even paler. "Dad, that's Richard Hawthorne. He was a client of the company Jessica worked for." "Was he a client, or is he her lover?" "Dad," Jessica said, "he was just a difficult client she had to deal with." As Andrew processed this information, Jessica walked through my front door without knocking. She looked elegant, carrying a suitcase. "Andrew, what the hell are you doing here? I told you to wait in the car." That's when she saw the documents scattered on the table. Her face changed completely. The mask of the loving wife disappeared, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "What is this?" she asked, but the tone was no longer one of surprise. It was that of someone who had been caught. "Jessica," he said calmly, "these are her account statements from the Cayman Islands. JS Investments Limited. $300,000 transferred 8 months ago." She looked at Andrew, then at him, quickly calculating her options. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Jessica Thompson from Phoenix. Jessica Williams from Portland. Do you want me to go on?" It was at that moment that she did something that completely shocked me. She laughed. A loud, genuine laugh, as if she had heard the best joke in the world. "You know what, James? You're smarter than I thought." Andrew stood up. "Jessica, what's going on?" "What's going on, honey," she said, turning to him, "is that his daddy hired private investigators to find out that her wife is a professional con artist." The coldness in her voice was terrifying. "Jessica, that's not true, is it?" Andrew asked, despair clear in his voice. "Of course it's true, Andrew. Why did you think I married you? For love." She laughed again. "You're a boring 32-year-old engineer who lives with his mother. I needed his access to Dad's account." The silence that followed was deafening. "Jessica," Andrew whispered, "you told me you loved me." "I said a lot of things, honey. Like Melissa's clinic existed, that I was a virgin when we got married, that I wanted to have children with him." She checked her watch. "Actually, I have to go. I have a flight to Las Vegas in 2 hours." "With Richard Hawthorne?" I asked. She smiled. "Richard is a very generous man. And unlike his son, he doesn't ask questions about where I spend his money." Andrew was looking at her as if he were seeing her for the first time. "Jessica, you can't be serious." "Andrew, did you really think that $200,000 in jewelry and clothes was for you? That the trips to Miami were to visit family?" She shook her head. "Honey, All of that was to keep Richard interested while I cleaned out his father's account. What about the credit cards? The $120,000 in debt. They were real. And necessary. You think keeping a wealthy lover is cheap? She picked up her bag. But don't worry. Richard paid off all the debts yesterday. A parting gift. Andrew stood up, staggering. Jessica, we're married. For now. My lawyer has already started the divorce papers. What about Andrew? She smiled cruelly. I'm going to ask for alimony based on the standard of living you provided him for the past 8 months. It was at that moment that I played my final card. Jessica, you're not going anywhere. She turned to him, eyebrows raised. Excuse me. I called the FBI this morning. Bank fraud across state lines is a federal crime. He's waiting for you at the airport. The confidence on her face faltered for the first time. You're bluffing. I showed her his phone, with the message Marcus had sent me 5 minutes earlier, federal agents positioned at gate B12. She's not boarding. Jessica's face went white. Also, I continued, Richard Hawthorne was arrested an hour ago for tax evasion. His wife turned over all the evidence of the affair and the undeclared payments to the IRS. Jessica dropped her suitcase. And Jessica? Last night, I transferred the remaining $200,000 from her Cayman account back to my account here. Apparently, when you commit financial crimes, the government can freeze and repatriate stolen funds very quickly. Andrew looked at her for a long moment. Then, for the first time in 8 months, I saw my real son emerge. No, Jessica. You destroyed my life, stole my father, and made a fool of me for 8 months. Her voice was firm. You're going to face the consequences alone. The sound of sirens began to echo outside. Jessica looked out the window and saw the police cars arriving. This isn't over, James, she said, her voice trembling with rage. I'm going to. You're going to what? I interrupted. You're going to spend the next 5 to 10 years in federal prison for fraud, money laundering, and theft? The sirens stopped at my driveway. Jessica Marie Crawford, I said when the police knocked on the door, welcome to the consequences. And that's when I realized, the real twist wasn't finding out that she was a criminal. It was seeing his son finally wake up to reality and choose the right side. But what happened next, when the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, was something none of us were prepared to witness. 6 months later, I was sitting on the porch of my new home in Arizona, watching the sun set over the mountains. Retirement had become everything I had ever dreamed it would be, peaceful, comfortable, and free of family drama. Andrew visited me every month, flying in from Denver where he had rebuilt her life from scratch. He had lost his job because of the financial investigations, but he found something better, a position at an engineering firm that valued integrity over family connections. Dad, the letter from the court arrived, he said, handing me an official envelope during his March visit. I opened it and read it silently. Jessica Marie Crawford had been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for bank fraud, money laundering, and multiple counts of theft across state lines. The judge had been particularly harsh, citing his systematic predatory pattern of exploiting older, vulnerable men. How does he feel about that? I asked Andrew. He was silent for a moment, staring at the mountains. Relief, mostly. And shame for being so blind. During the months of investigation, we discovered that Jessica had stolen more than $1.2 million from her victims over 7 years. Richard Hawthorne, her last lover, had lost $300,000 and his 20-year marriage. The men from Phoenix and Portland finally got justice when she was convicted of the crimes committed against them as well. Dad, can I ask you something? Sure, son. How did you know from the beginning that something was wrong? I smiled, remembering that morning in October when they had shown up at my door. Andrew, no one spends $400,000 in 8 months without knowing exactly what he's doing. Jessica wasn't impulsive. She was calculating. The truth was, I had begun to suspect her long before the confrontation. Little details that didn't add up. How she always knew the exact balance of our joint account. How he always had an excuse ready for any financial question. How her stories about the past changed slightly with each retelling. But what bothered me the most, I continued, was how he tried to isolate me from you. Every time you came to visit him alone, she would arrange an emergency. Every time I suggested we have dinner together, she had other plans. James, I have good news. The Cayman account has been fully repatriated. $340,000 was transferred back to her account today. $340,000. More than the $300,000 stolen, thanks to the accumulated interest and penalties the government had applied to the offshore account. And Marcus, what happened to Richard Hawthorne? Arrested for tax evasion. He lost his company, his wife filed for divorce, and he's cooperating with the FBI in exchange for a reduced sentence. Apparently, Jessica wasn't the only person he was illegally financing. After I hung up, Andrew looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen in years, genuine respect. Dad, I owe you an apology that goes far beyond sorry. I let a stranger destroy our family and our trust. Andrew, you were the victim of a professional criminal. She knew exactly how to manipulate decent men. But I should have trusted his. He raised me better than that. I looked at my son, really looked at him for the first time in months. He had lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes, but there was something different in his eyes. A maturity that wasn't there before. Son, you've learned a lesson that many men never learn. That real love doesn't ask you to choose between your family and her. Real love brings people together, it doesn't tear them apart. That night, Andrew stayed for dinner. We cooked together for the first time since he was a teenager, talked about work, about future plans, about everything except Jessica. Dad, can I tell you something? Always. When you hired that investigator, when you refused to give us more money, when you called the police, part of me was angry. But a bigger part was relieved. Relieved. Because it meant I still had a father who cared enough about me to protect me from my own bad decisions. 3 months later, I received a letter in prison. Jessica had tried to write to me, asking for forgiveness, claiming she had changed, begging me to convince Andrew to visit her. I tore up the letter without finishing it. Some bridges, once burned completely, should remain that way. Today, a year after it all began, Andrew is dating an elementary school teacher named Linda, a woman who works, pays her own bills, and insisted on meeting his entire family before committing to anything serious. She even asked to see our family bank statements, just to make sure there were no financial surprises waiting. I approve of her completely. The lesson I've learned is that protecting the people we love sometimes means making difficult decisions that she doesn't initially understand. The best revenge against people who try to destroy your family isn't to repay them in kind. It's to build a life so strong and successful that she becomes completely irrelevant to his happiness. Jessica thought she was stealing my money and destroying my family. But what she really did was give me the opportunity to prove to my son what it means to have a father who fights for him, even when he can't fight for himself. And you, how would you react if you found out that someone close to his family was being manipulated by a dangerous person? Leave her opinion on this story of family manipulation in the comments. And if you enjoyed seeing how intelligent justice always wins over greed, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that the truth always finds a way to come out. Because in the end, Jessica tried to steal from me, but she ended up giving me back something much more valuable, my son.